Masonry is essentially a religious order. Most of its legends and allegories are of a sacred nature. Much of Masonry is woven into the structure of Christianity. We have learned to consider our own religion as the only inspired one, and this probably accounts for a great many of the misunderstandings existing in the world today concerning the place occupied by Masonry in the spiritual ethics of our race. A religion is a divinely inspired code of morals. A religious person is one inspired to nobler living by this code. Me is identified by the code, which is his source of illumination. Thus we may say that a Christian is one who receives his spiritual ideals of right and wrong from the message of the Christ, while a Buddhist is one who molds his life into the archetype of moral status given by the great Gautama, or one of the other Buddhas. All doctrines which seek to unfold and preserve that invisible spark in man which he has named spirit, are said to be spiritual. Those which ignore this invisible element and concentrate entirely upon the visible are said to be material. There is in religion a wonderful place of balance, where the materialist and spiritist meet on the plane of logic and reason. Science and theology are two ends of a single truth, but the world will never receive the full benefit of their investigations until they have made peace with each other, and labor hand in hand for the accomplishment of the great work, the liberation of spirit and intelligence from the three-dimensional graves of ignorance, superstition, and fear. That which gives man a knowledge of himself can be inspired only by the self, and God is the self in all things. In truth, he is the inspiration and the thing inspired. It has been stated in Scripture that God was the Word and that the Word was made flesh. Man's task now is to make flesh reflect the glory of that Word, which is within the soul of himself. It is this task which has created the need of religion, not one faith alone, but many creeds, each searching in its own way, each meeting the needs of individual people, each emphasizing one point above all the others. 12 fellow craftsmen are exploring the 4 points of the compass. Are not these 12 the 12 great world religions, each seeking in its own way for that which was lost in the ages past, and the quest of which is the birthright of man? Is not the quest for reality in a world of illusions the task for which each comes into the world? We are here to gain balance in a sphere of unbalance, to find rest in a restless thing, to unveil illusion, and to slay the dragon of our own animal natures. As David, king of Israel, gave to the hands of his son Solomon the task he could not accomplish, so each generation gives to the next the work of building the temple, or rather, rebuilding the dwelling of the Lord, which is on the Mount Moriah. Truth is not lost, yet it must be sought for and found. Reality is ever present, dimensionless, yet all-prevailing. Man, creature of attitudes and desires, and servant of impressions and opinions, cannot, with the wandering unbalance of an untutored mind, learn to know that which he himself does not possess. As man attains a quality, he discovers that quality, and recognizes about him the thing newborn within himself. Man is born with eyes, yet it is only after long years of sorrow that he learns to see clearly and in harmony with the plan. He is born with senses, but it is only after long experience and fruitless strivings that he brings these senses to the temple and lays them as offerings upon the altar of the Great Father, who alone does all things well and with understanding. Man is, in truth, born in the sin of ignorance, but with a capacity for understanding. He has a mind capable of wisdom, a heart. 5, 6, 7. Masonry is not a material thing, it is a science of the soul. It is not a creed or doctrine, but a universal expression of the divine wisdom. Point 1. The coming together of English guilds, or even the building of Solomon's temple, as it is understood today, has little if anything to do with the true origin of Masonry, for Masonry does not deal with personalities. It is neither historical nor archaeological, but is a divine symbolic language perpetuating under certain concrete symbols the divine mysteries of the ancients. Only those who see in it a cosmic study, a life work, a spiritual inspiration to better thinking, better living, and better acting, with the spiritual attainment of enlightenment as the end, and with the daily life of the true Mason as the means, have gained even the slightest insight into the true mysteries of the ancient and accepted right. 1. This term. 2. The groups of celestial intelligences governing the creative processes in cosmos. The age of the Masonic school is not to be calculated by hundreds or even thousands of years, for it never had any origin in the worlds of form. The world as we see it is merely an experimental laboratory in which man is laboring to build and express greater and more perfect vehicles. Into this laboratory pour thousands and millions of rays descending from the cosmic hierarchies. Point 2. These mighty globes and orbs, which focus their energies upon mankind and mold his destiny, do so in an orderly manner, each in its own way and place. And it is the working of these mystic hierarchies in the universe which forms the pattern around which the Masonic school has been built, for the true lodge of the Mason is the universe. Creedless and religionless he stands, a master of all faiths, and those who take up the study of Masonry without realizing the depth, the beauty, and the spiritual power of the thing they are analyzing can never gain anything of permanence from their studies. The age of the mystery schools can be traced by the true student back to the dawn of time, hundreds of millions, yes, billions of years ago, when the temple of the solar man was in the making. That was the first temple of the king, and there in the dawn of time were given and laid down the true mysteries of the ancient lodge, and it was the gods of creation and the spirits of the dawn who first tiled the master's lodge. 8. So far as it is possible to discover, ancient Masonry and the beautiful cosmic allegories that it teaches, perpetuated through hundreds of lodges and ancient mysteries, forms the oldest of the mystery schools. 3. In its preservation through the ages has not depended upon itself as an exoteric body of partly evolved individuals, but upon a concealed brotherhood, the esoteric side of Masonry. All of the great mystery schools have hierarchies upon the spiritual planes of nature, which are expressing themselves in this world through creeds and organisms. The true student is seeking to lift himself from the exoteric body upward spiritually until he joins the esoteric group, which, without a lodge on the physical plane of nature, is still greater by far than all the lodges of which it is the central fire. These spiritual instructors of humanity are forced to labor in the concrete world with things comprehensible to the concrete mind. 3. This is a tur. 9. 10. 11. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes. Tabula Smaragdina. The Emerald Tablet, the most ancient monument of the Chaldeans concerning the Lapis Philosophorum. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes, illustrated on the opposite page, introduces us to King Hiram, the hero of the Masonic legend. The name Hiram is taken from the Chaldee Chiram. The first two large words mean the secret work. The second line in large letters, Chiram Telet Mekasat, means Chiram, the universal agent, one in essence, but three in aspect. Translated, the body of the tablet reads as follows. It is true and no lie, certain and to be depended upon, that the superior agrees with the inferior, and the inferior with the superior, to effect that one truly wonderful work. As all things owe their existence to the will of the only one, so all things owe their origin to only one thing, the most hidden, by the arrangement of the only God. The father of that only one thing is the sun, its mother is the moon. The wind carries it in its wings, but its nurse is a spiritual earth. That only one thing is the father of all things in the universe. Its power is perfect after it has been united to a spiritual earth. Separate that spiritual earth from the dense or crude earth by means of a gentle heat, with much attention. In great measure it ascends from earth up into heaven, and descends again, newborn, on the earth, and the superior and the inferior are increased in power. By this thou wilt partake of the honors of the whole earth. And darkness shall fly from thee. This is the strength of all powers, with this thou wilt be able to overcome all things and to transmute all that is fine and all that is coarse. In this manner the world was created, but the arrangements that follow this road are hidden. For this reason I am called Chirum Telet Mekasat, one in essence, but three in aspect. In this Trinity is hidden the wisdom of the whole world. It is ended now what I have said concerning the effect of the sun. Fineness of the Tabula Smaragdina. In a rare, unpublished old manuscript dealing with early Masonic and Hermetic mysteries, we find the following information concerning the mysterious universal agent referred to as Chiram, Hiram. The sense of this emerald tablet can sufficiently convince us that the author was well acquainted with the secret operations of nature and with the secret work of the philosophers, alchemists and Hermetic philosophists. He likewise well knew and believed in the true God. It has been believed since several ages that Cham, one of the sons of Noah, is the author of this monument of antiquity. A very ancient author, whose name is not known, who lived several centuries before Christ, mentions this tablet, and says that he had seen it in Egypt, at the court, that it was a precious stone, an emerald, whereon these characters were represented in bas relief, not engraved. He states that it was in his time esteemed over 2,000 years old, and that the matter of this emerald had once been in a fluid state like melted glass, and had been cast in a mold, and that to this flux the artist had given the hardness of a natural and genuine emerald, by art. Alchemical art. The Canaanites were called the Phoenicians by the Greeks, who have told us that they had Hermes for one of their kings. There is a great relation between Chiram and Hermes. 12. 13. Text. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them, while the sun, or the moon, or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the door shall be shut in the streets, when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Also when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshoppers shall be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets, or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken at the fountain, or the wheel at the cistern. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. Ecclesiastes 12:1-7. Temple builders. You are the temple builders of the future. With your hands must be raised the domes and spires of a coming civilization. Upon the foundation you have laid, tomorrow shall build a far more noble edifice. Builders of the temple of character wherein should dwell an enlightened spirit, truer of the rock of relationship, molder of those vessels created to contain the oil of life, up, and to the tasks appointed. Never before in the history of men have you had the opportunity that now confronts you. The world waits for the illuminated one who shall come from between the pillars of the portico. Hoodwinked and bound humanity seeks entrance to the temple of wisdom. Fling wide the gate, and let the worthy enter. Fling wide the gate, and let the light shine forth, for that light is the life of men. Hasten to complete the dwelling of the Lord. The Spirit of God may come and dwell among His people, sanctified and ordained according to His law. 14. Prologue, in the fields of chaos. Two great forms appeared in the gleaming flame of cosmic light bordered by the dark clouds of not being, and a mighty voice thrilled through eternity, each sparkling atom dancing, swaying and swirling with the power of the Creator's word, for while the great, blue-robed figure bowed in awe before the footstool of his Maker, and a great hand reached down from heaven, its fingers extended in benediction. For the creative fiat, or rate of vibration through which all things are created. 15. 16. 17. I, the candidate. There comes a time in the individual growth of every living thing when it realizes with dawning consciousness that it is a prisoner. While apparently free to move and have its being, the struggling life cognizes through ever greater vehicles its own limitation. It is at this point that man cries out with ever greater power to be liberated from the binding ties which, though invisible to mortal eyes, still chain him with bonds far more terrible than those of a physical prison. Many have read the story of the prisoner of Shiloah, who as the years rolled by paced back and forth in the narrow confines of his prison cell, while the blue waters rolled ceaselessly above his head, and the only sound that broke the stillness of his eternal night was the constant swishing and lapping of the waves. We pity the prisoner in his physical tomb, and as we see stone walls surrounding man we are sad at heart, for we know how life loves liberty. But there is one prisoner whose plight is far worse than that of those of earth. He has not even the narrow confines of a prison cell around him. He cannot pace to and fro to wear into ruts by his ceaseless striding the cobblestones of a dungeon floor. That eternal prisoner is life, prisoned within the dark stone walls of matter, with not a single ray to brighten the blackness of his fate. He fights eternally for life, praying in the dark confines of gloomy walls for light and opportunity. This is the eternal prisoner who through the ceaseless ages of cosmic unfoldment, through forms unnumbered and species now unknown, strives eternally to liberate himself and to gain self-conscious expression, the birthright of every created thing. He awaits the day when, standing upon the rocks that now form his shapeless tomb, he may raise his arms to heaven, bathed in the sunlight of spiritual freedom, free to join the sparkling atoms and dancing light beings released from the bonds of prison wall and tomb. Around life, that wondrous germ in the heart of every living thing, that sacred prisoner in his gloomy cell, that master builder laid away in the grave of matter, has been built the wondrous legend of the Holy Sepulchre. The mystic philosophers of the ages, under allegories unnumbered, have perpetuated this wonderful story, and among the craft masons it forms the mystic ritual of Hiram, the master builder, murdered in his temple by the very builders who should have served him as he labored to perfect the dwelling place of his God. Matter is the tomb. It is the dead wall of substances whose lives have not as yet been awakened into the pulsating energies of spirit. It exists in many degrees and forms, not only in the chemical elements which form the solids of our universe, but in finer and more subtle substances. These, though expressing through emotion and thought, are still beings of the world of form. These substances form the great cross of matter, which opposes the growth of all things and by opposition makes all growth possible. It is the great cross of hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon upon which even the life germ in protoplasm is crucified and suspended in agony. These substances are incapable of giving it adequate expression. The spirit within cries out for freedom, freedom to be, to express, to manifest its true place in the great plan of cosmic unfoldment. It is this great yearning within the heart of man which sends him slowly onward toward the gate of the temple. It is this inner urge for greater understanding and greater light which brought into being through the law of necessity the great cosmic Masonic lodge dedicated to those lives which were seeking union with the powers of light that their prison walls might be removed. This shell cannot be discarded, it must be raised into union with the life. Each dead, crystallized atom in the human body must be set vibrating and spinning to a higher rate. 18. 19, 20, 21. 2. The Entered Apprentice. There are 3 grand steps in the unfoldment of the human soul before it completes the dwelling place of the spirit. These have been called respectively youth, manhood, and old age, or, as the Mason would say, the entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master builder. All life passes through these three grand stages of human consciousness. They can be listed as the man on the outside looking in, the man going in, and the man inside. The path of human life is governed as all things are by the laws of analogy. And as at birth we start our pilgrimage through youth, manhood, and old age, so the spiritual consciousness of man in his cosmic path of unfoldment passes from unconsciousness to perfect consciousness in the grand lodge of the universe. Before the initiation 5 of entered apprentice degree can be properly understood and appreciated, certain requirements must be considered, not merely those of the physical world but also those of the spiritual world. 5. Initiation is the process spiritually of being instructed in the processes of causes of causation, which lie behind every effect of nature. 6. Aston. 7. The 7 liberal arts and sciences are astronomy, music, geometry, arithmetic, logic, rhetoric, and grammar. The court of the tabernacle of the ancient Jews was divided into 3 parts: the outer court, the holy place, and the most holy of holies. These 3 divisions represent the 3 grand divisions of human consciousness. The degree of entered apprentice is acquired when the student signifies his intention to take the rough ashlar 6 which he cuts from the quarry and prepare it for the truing of the fellow craft. In other words, the first degree is really one of preparations. It is a material step dealing with material things, for all spiritual life must be raised upon a material foundation. 7 is the number of the entered apprentice as it relates to the 7 liberal arts and sciences. 7, and these are the powers with which the entered apprentice must labor before he is worthy to go onward into the more elevated and advanced degrees. Those who believe that they can reach the spiritual planes of nature without first passing through and conquering, and by conquering, mold matter into expressions of spiritual power, are much mistaken. For the first stage in the growth of a master mason is the mastery of the concrete conditions of life and the developing, through exercise on this plane, of nature sense centers which will later become channels for the expression of spiritual truths. 22. 23. 24. 25. 3. The fellow craft. Not only does life manifest through action on the physical plane, but, coming down from above, it manifests through emotion and the expressions of human sentiment. It is this type of energy which is taken up by the student when he starts his labors in the fellow craft. From youth, with its smiling face, he passes on to the greater responsibilities of manhood. On the second step of the temple stands a soldier dressed in shining armor, but his sword is sheathed and a book is in his hand. He is symbolic of strength, of the energy of Mars, and of the wonderful step in spiritual unfoldment which we know as fellow craft. Through each one of us there courses the fiery rays of human emotion, a great seething, boiling cauldron of power behind each action and expression of human energy. Like spirited horses chafing at the bit, like hounds eager for the chase, the emotional powers in man cannot be held in check, but breaking away the walls of restraint, they pour through his being in fiery, flaming expressions of dynamic energy. It is this great principle of emotion which we know as the second murderer of Hiram. It is through the perversion of human emotions that there comes into the world many of its countless sorrows, which through reaction, manifest in man's mental and physical bodies. It is strange how the divine powers may become perverted until each expression and urge becomes a ruffian and a murderer. The divine compassion of the gods manifests in this world of form very differently than in the realms of light. Divine compassion is energized by the same influxes as mortal passions and the lusts of earth. The spiritual light rays of cosmos, the fire princes of the dawn, seethe and surge through unregenerate man as the impulses which he perverts into murder and hate. The great, ceaseless power of chaos, the seething pinwheel spirals of never-ceasing motion, whose wild cadences are the music of the spheres, are energized by the same great power which man uses to destroy the highest and the best. The great, mystic power that sends the planets in gigantic orbits around the solar bodies. The energy which keeps each electron vibrating, spinning, and whirling, the great energy which is. Building the temple of God as it drives the nail and saws the plank, is now a merciless slave. Driver which, unmastered and uncurbed, strikes the compassionate one and sends him reeling backward into the darkness of his prison. Man does not listen to that little voice which speaks to him in ever-loving, ever-sorrowful note. This voice speaks of the peace accompanying the constructive application of energy which he must chain if he would master the powers of creation. How long will it take King Hiram of Tyre, the warrior on the second step, symbolic of the fellow craft of the cosmic lodge, to teach mankind the lessons of self-mastery? The teacher can do it only as he daily depicts the miseries which are the result of unmastered appetites. The strength of man was not made to be used destructively, but was given him that he might build a temple worthy to be the dwelling place of the great architect of the universe. God is glorifying himself through the individualized portions of himself, and is slowly teaching these individualized portions to understand and glorify the entire. The day has come when fellow craftsmen must know and apply their knowledge that the lost key to their grade is the mastery of emotion, which places the energy of the universe at their disposal. The only way that man can ever expect to be entrusted with great powers is by proving his ability to use them constructively and selflessly. When the mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething, surging energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy. He must follow in the footsteps of his forefather, Tubal-Cain, who with the mighty 26. A large percentage of the people of the world at the present time are passing through, spiritually, the degree of the fellow craft. With its 5 senses. 8 The sense perceptions come under the control of the emotional energies. Therefore the development of the senses is necessary to the constructive expression of the fellow craft power. Man must realize that all the powers which his millions of years of need have earned for him have come in order that through them he may liberate more fully the prisoner within his own being. As the fellow craft's degree is the middle of the three, the spiritual duty of each member is to reach the point of poise or balance, which is always secured between extremes. The mastery of expression is also to be found in this degree. The key words of the fellow craft may be briefly defined as compassion, poise, and transmutation. 8. 27. 28. 4. The Master Mason. On the upper step of spiritual unfoldment stands the Master Mason, who spiritually represents the graduate from the school of esoteric learning. Among the ancient symbols he is represented as an old man leaning upon a staff, his long white beard upon his chest, and his deep piercing eyes sheltered by the brows of a philosopher. He is in truth old, not in years, but in the wisdom and understanding which are the only true measurement of age. Through years and lives of labor, he has found the staff of life and truth upon which he leans. He no longer depends upon the words of others, but upon the still voice that speaks from the heart of his own being. There is no more glorious position that a man may hold than that of a master builder, who has risen by laboring through the degrees of human consciousness. Time is the differentiation of eternity constructed by man to measure the passage of human events. On the spiritual planes of nature, it is the space or distance between stages of spiritual growth and is not measured by material things. Many a child comes into this world a grand master of the Masonic school, while many a revered and honored brother passes silently to rest without having gained admittance to its gate. The Master Mason is one whose life is full, pressed down, and brimming over with experience which he has gained in his slow pilgrimage up the winding stairs. The Master Mason represents the power of the human mind, the connecting link which binds heaven and earth together in an endless chain. His spiritual light is greater because he has evolved a higher vehicle for its expression. Even above constructive action and emotion soars the power of thought, which swiftly flies on wings to the source of light. The mind is the highest form of his human expression, and he passes into the great darkness of the inner room, illuminated only by the fruits of reason. The glorious privileges of a Master Mason are in keeping with his greater knowledge and wisdom. From the student he has blossomed forth as the teacher. From the kingdom of those who follow he has joined that little group who must always lead the way. For him the heavens have opened and the great light has shone down, bathing him in its radiance. The prodigal son, so long a wanderer in the regions of darkness, has returned again to his Father's house. The voice speaks from the heavens, its power thrilling the Master until his own being seems filled with its divinity, saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." The ancients taught that the sun was not a source of light, life, or power, but a medium through which life and light were reflected into physical substance. The Master Mason is in truth a sun, a great reflector of light, who radiates through his organism, purified by ages of preparation, the glorious power which is the light of the lodge. He, in truth, has become the spokesman of the Most High. He stands between the glowing firelight and the world. Through him passes Hydra, the great snake, and from its mouth there pours to man the light of God. His symbol is the rising sun, for in him the globe of day has indeed risen in all its splendor from the darkness of the night, illuminating the immortal east with the first promise of approaching day. With a sigh the Master lays aside his tools. For him the temple is nearing completion, the last stones are being placed, and he slakes his lime with a vague regret as he sees dome and minaret rise through the power of his handiwork. The true Master does not long for rest, and as he sees the days of his labor close, a sadness weighs upon his heart. Slowly the brothers of his craft leave him, each going his respective way, and, climbing step by step, the Master stands alone on the cap of the temple. One stone must yet be placed, but this he cannot find. Somewhere it lies concealed. He kneels in prayer, asking that the powers that be aid him in his search. The light of the sun shines upon him, and bathes him in a splendor celestial. Suddenly, 29, 30, 31. V. The qualifications of a true Mason. 1. All true Masons have come into the realization that there is but one lodge, and that is the universe. There is but one brotherhood, and this is composed of everything that moves or exists in any of the planes of nature. He realizes that the Temple of Solomon is really the temple of the Solar Man, Sol Omon, the King of the universe, manifesting through his three primordial builders. He realizes that his vow of brotherhood and fraternity is universal, and that plant, animal, mineral, and man are all included in the true Masonic craft. His duty as an elder brother to all the kingdoms of nature beneath him is well understood by the true craftsman, who would rather die than fail in this, his great obligation. He has dedicated his life upon the altar of his God, and is willing and glad to serve the lesser through the powers he has gained from the greater. The mystic Mason, in building the eyes that see behind the apparent ritual, recognizes the oneness of life manifesting through the diversity of form. 2. A true disciple of ancient Masonry has given up forever the worship of personalities. He realizes with his greater insight that all forms and their position in material affairs are of no importance to him compared to the life which is evolving within. Those who allow appearances or worldly expressions to deter them from their self-appointed tasks are failures in Masonry, for Masonry is an abstract science of spiritual unfoldment. Material prosperity is not the measure of soul growth. The true Mason realizes that behind these diverse forms there is one connected life principle, the spark of God in all living things. It is this life which he considers when measuring the worth of a brother. It is to this life that he appeals for a recognition of spiritual unity. He realizes that it is the discovery of this spark of unity which makes him a conscious member of the cosmic lodge. Most of all, he must learn to understand that this divine spark shines out as brightly from the body of a foe as it does from the dearest friend. The true Mason has learned to be divinely impersonal in thought, action, and desire. 3. The true Mason is not creed-bound. He realizes with the divine illumination of his lodge that as a Mason his religion must be universal. Christ, Buddha, or Muhammad, the name means little, for he recognizes only the light and not the bearer. He worships at every shrine, bows before every altar, whether in temple, mosque, or cathedral, realizing with his truer understanding the oneness of all spiritual truth. All true Masons know that the only heathen are those who, having great ideals, do not live up to them. They know that all religions are one story told in many ways for peoples whose ideals differ, but whose great purpose is in harmony with Masonic ideals. North, east, south and west stretch the diversities of human thought, and while the ideals of man apparently differ, when all is said and the crystallization of form with its false concepts is swept away, one great truth remains: all existing things are temple builders, laboring for a single end. No true Mason can be narrow, for his lodge is the divine expression of all broadness. There is no place for little minds in a great work. 4. The Mason must develop the powers of observation. He must seek eternally in all expressions of nature for the things which he has lost because he failed to work for them. He must become a student of human nature and see in those around him the unfolding and varying expressions of one connected spiritual intelligence. The great spiritual ritual of his lodge is played out before him in every action of his brother man. The entire Masonic initiation is an open secret, for anyone can see it played out on the street corners of cities or in the untracked wilderness of nature. The Mason has sworn that every day he will extract from life its message for him and build it into the temple of his God. He seeks to learn the things which will make him of greater use in the divine plan, a better instrument in the hands of the 32, 33, 34. Epilogue. In the Temple of Cosmos, the priest of Ra. What words are there in modern language to describe the great temple of Amun-Ra? Now it stands on the sand of Egypt, a pile of broken ruins, but in the days gone by it rose a forest of plumed pillars holding up roofs of solid sandstone, carved into friezes of lotus blossoms and papyri plants by hands long still, colored lifelike by pigments the secrets of which were lost with the civilization that discovered them. A checkerboard floor of black and white blocks stretched out until it was lost among the wilderness of pillars, and from the massive walls the faces of gods unnamed looked down in passive grandeur upon the silent files of priests that kept alight the altar fires, whose feeble glow alone lighted the massive chambers through the darkness of Egyptian night. It was a weird, impressive scene, and the flickering lights sent strange, ghastly forms scurrying among the piles of granite which rose like mighty altars from the darkness below to be lost again in the shadows above. Suddenly a figure appeared from among the shadows, carrying in his hand a small oil lamp which cut the darkness like a little star and brought into strange relief the figure of him who bore it. He appeared to be old, for his long beard and braided hair were quite gray, but his large black eyes shone with a fire seldom seen even in youth. He was robed from head to foot in blue and gold, and around his forehead was coiled a snake of precious metal, set with jeweled eyes that gave out flashes of light when the flames struck them. Never had the light of Ra's chamber shone on a grander head or a more powerful form than that of the high priest of the temple. He was the mouthpiece of the gods, and the sacred wisdom of ancient Egypt was written in fiery letters on his soul. As he crossed the great room, in one hand the scepter of the priestcraft, and in the other the tiny lamp, he was more like a spirit visitor from beyond the mountains of death than a physical being, for his jeweled sandals made no sound, and the sheen from his robes formed a halo of light around his stately form. Down through the silent passageways, lined with their massive pillars, past the phantom form. Down steps lined with kneeling sphinxes and through avenues of crouching lions the priest lighted his way until at last he reached a vaulted chamber on the marble floor of which strange designs were traced in a language long forgotten. Each angle of the many-sided and dimly lighted room was formed by a seated figure carved in stone, so massive that its head and shoulders were lost in shadows no eye could pierce. In the center of this mystic chamber stood a great chest. It was of some black stone carved with serpents and strange winged dragons. The lid was a solid slab, weighing hundreds of pounds, without a handle of any kind, and apparently there was no way of opening it without the use of Herculean powers. The high priest leaned over and with the lamp he carried, lighted the fire upon an altar that stood near, sending shadows of that weird room scurrying into the distant corners. As the flame rose it was reflected from the great stone faces above, all of which seemed to stare at the black coffer in the center of the room with strange, sightless eyes. The priest raised his serpent-wound staff and facing the chest of somber marble called out in a voice that echoed and re-echoed from every corner of the ancient temple. Aratimas, come forth. 35. 36. 37. 38. Masonic aspirations. Hidden in the depths of the unknown, three silent beings weave the endless thread of human fate. They are called the Sisters and are known in mythology as the Norms or Fates, who incessantly twist between their fingers a tiny cord, which one day is to be woven into a living garment, the coronation robe of the priest king. 39. 40.